You know, folks say your children are your greatest blessing, but sometimes they can bring you the greatest heartache, too. My son, Eric, was always ambitious, but that ambition turned into something darker the night he showed up at my house in Austin, Texas, demanding I hand over the home I'd built with my late wife, Linda. I remember standing in my kitchen that March evening, the air thick with the scent of roast chicken and cornbread, when he burst through the door like a storm. No hello, just a deep scowl and words sharp as a Texas thorn bush. Dad, Michelle went off the rails again today. About money, about the car, about everything. Eric's face was red, his tie crooked, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He went on about our neighbor getting a new BMW while he and Michelle still drove their old Toyota. I just kept stirring the gravy, trying to keep the peace. Patience, son, I told him. You work harder than most men I know. Eric paced the worn linoleum floors I'd installed myself when he was still a boy. Easy for you to say, Dad. You don't wake up every morning to a wife who thinks you're a failure. I checked the chicken in the oven, the same way Linda used to, feeling her absence like an ache in my bones. Your kids are healthy and happy. That's what matters, I reminded him. Healthy don't pay for private school, he grumbled, slumping down at the table. He started listing Michelle's new complaints, the neighbor's European vacations, fancy kitchen remodels, cars he'd never afford. The wrinkles around his eyes seemed deeper since last Christmas. What triggered her today? I asked, pouring him some strong coffee. He let out a bitter laugh. Olivia's mom picked her up in a Tesla. Michelle spent the whole afternoon researching Teslas, then told me I'm not providing for our family. I served him a big plate of chicken and mashed potatoes, just like Linda would have wanted. We sat surrounded by 40 years of family photos, memories of birthdays, graduations, and holidays when we had nothing but each other. Your mother and I got through tougher times, I told him. And you two will, too. Remember when I lost my job at the mill? We ate beans and rice for months, but we never stopped believing. Eric dug into his food, comforted by flavors of home. Michelle doesn't understand that sometimes hard work isn't enough, he said, glancing at the old rose bushes Linda planted outside our kitchen window. Marriage is two people pulling the same direction, I replied, handing him the bowl of potatoes. His phone buzzed again, probably Michelle with another list of complaints. He flipped it over, ignoring it for once. We ate quietly, sharing the kind of silence only fathers and sons understand. More chicken? I asked, already reaching for the platter. For a moment he smiled, looking like the boy who used to come running to this kitchen after school. Thanks, Dad. I always feel better after talking to you. I brought out the apple pie cooling on the counter, Linda's secret recipe. As we ate dessert, Eric's mood finally lifted. Dad, a realtor called yesterday, he said. Jennifer Mills. Offered $700,000 for the house. I set down my fork. Not interested, I said, as calmly as I could. But I saw the way Eric's eyes widened, calculating all the possibilities. 700,000? And you said no? His voice jumped an octave. Dad, that's more money than most people see in a lifetime. He got up, his energy shifting from tired to wild. Michelle would stop complaining. Olivia and Ethan could go to any college they wanted. You'd never have to worry about money again. I took a deep breath. Eric, I'm not worried about money. I'm worried about what matters. He started talking about assisted living, retirement trips, all the things I supposedly needed. You could be the last holdout, Dad, he said. If the developers want your land, you could get even more, $800,000, maybe more. I watched him, my son, so desperate for a shortcut, seeing only dollar signs where I saw 40 years of love and struggle. Come with me, I said, leading him into the living room, where photos of Linda and the kids lined the mantel. This house isn't just property. Eric. I bought it after 10 years of saving every penny. Linda and I built a life here. Your first steps were in this very room. He shifted impatiently, eyes glued to his phone, missing the memories all around him. Dad, that was a lifetime ago. Things are different now. Some things shouldn't change, I said. This house is your history, your mother's memory, your children's legacy. But Eric only saw opportunity. Sentimental value doesn't pay tuition, he insisted. $700,000 could solve everything. I stared at him, finally realizing how far apart we'd grown. Solve everything for you, I said quietly. But what about what's right? He moved to the window, dreaming about the developer's promise of a shiny new future. These old houses are just obstacles to progress, he said. The clock in the hallway struck 8, its chimes echoing through the house that once felt so warm. I watched my son, my own flesh and blood, turn away from the life we'd built together, and in that moment I knew nothing would ever be the same. Eric stood there by the living room window, his reflection tangled among the family photos on the glass. I saw a man I barely recognized, somewhat older, more desperate than the little boy who used to beg me for one more bedtime story. Dad, I've been thinking. He started, pacing the faded rug Linda picked out on our 20th anniversary. There's a way we can help each other. If you sell the house, you could come live with us, be close to Olivia and Ethan. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. The words hung in the air like the dust motes drifting through the sunlight. I pictured myself squeezed into Eric's townhouse in suburban Dallas, tripping over toys, trying to find quiet in a house that had never truly been mine. Michelle said you could have the guest room, or if you'd rather, there's a really nice senior living place down the road. They've got nurses, games, a shuttle to the mall. He said it like he was offering me the world, but all I heard was an eviction notice. I'm not ready for that, Eric. I built this place with my own hands. I belong here. He pressed, his tone shifting from persuasive to almost pleading. Dad, you're 68. This house is too much for one person. You could be comfortable for the rest of your life. I could pay off my cards, get Michelle off my back. The kids could have everything. The more he talked, the more I understood. This wasn't about my comfort. It was about his escape. His bills, his burdens, his dreams of an easier life. Eric, I appreciate you worrying, but I'm not ready to leave. And I'm not selling this house. His smile faltered. The warmth drained from his eyes, replaced by something colder. You're not thinking straight, Dad. You're clinging to memories. It's just a house. I felt my jaw tighten. It's not just a house. It's your mother's roses blooming every spring. It's your childhood etched in the doorframe. It's 40 years of sacrifice, not some pile of bricks to be traded for quick cash. He looked away, jaw clenched. You never understand. Michelle is threatening to leave me. I'm drowning, Dad, and you're sitting on a gold mine. His voice cracked, the mask slipping. The argument grew sharper, echoing off the walls. I reminded him of all I'd done, paying for college, covering the down payment on his first car, helping with the wedding when they blew their budget. That's what fathers do, he snapped, raising his voice. You're supposed to help your kids. I shook my head, feeling the old ache in my chest. Not like this, Eric. Not at the expense of everything we built. He stormed out of the living room, grabbing his jacket off the hook with a force that rattled the door. You're selfish, Dad. You'd rather sit in this museum than help your own son. The front door slammed, and his car peeled away into the night, leaving tire marks on the street and a cold emptiness in the house. I stood for a long time, listening to the silence, remembering Linda's laughter in this very room. The walls seemed to close in around me, the memories suddenly sharper, more fragile. I carried the dishes to the kitchen and washed them by hand, just like she used to, every plate and fork an act of stubborn hope. That night, I sat in my old recliner, the same one Linda bought me for my 50th birthday, and watched the shadows crawl across the ceiling. I counted every sacrifice I'd made for Eric, every overtime shift, every sleepless night worrying about his future, every penny scraped together for his education. And now he called me selfish for wanting to hold on to the only thing I had left. Sleep came slow, broken by the creaks of the old house and the memory of Eric's words. The next morning, the sun rose bright over the Texas hills, but the world felt different, uncertain, like a storm building on the horizon. I tried to go about my routine, making coffee, feeding the old golden retriever, Dusty, who seemed to sense my unease. But Eric's threat lingered in my mind. "If you won't sell, I'll find another way," he'd said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard. By noon, I found myself double-checking the locks and staring out the window every time a car passed. It was foolish, I told myself. Eric would calm down, Michelle would find something else to worry about. But somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't over. That evening, I sat on the porch as the sky turned purple and the first stars blinked on over the neighborhood. Dusty curled at my feet, snoring gently. For the first time in decades, my house felt less like a haven and more like a fortress under siege. I whispered a prayer to Linda, hoping for her strength, as the wind rustled through her roses and carried the distant sound of children playing, children who would one day inherit the stories behind these walls, if I had anything to say about it. But as darkness settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming for everything I'd spent a lifetime protecting. The next few days passed in a haze of routine and uneasy quiet. I went about my business, tinkering in the garage, trimming Linda's rose bushes, reading the local Austin paper over my morning coffee. But every little sound made me jump. Every car that slowed down out front had me peeking through the blinds, wondering if Eric was coming back with a new plan or, God forbid, someone else. I tried to push the fear aside. That wasn't how I'd lived my life. I survived tough years working double shifts at the plant, putting food on the table through hard times, never once flinching from responsibility. But something about Eric's last words had chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just disappointment, it was determination, the kind I'd only seen when he was chasing a prize in his younger days. Only now the prize was my house. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, the phone rang. I recognized the number, Jennifer Mills, the real estate agent who'd made that sky-high offer for my home. I hesitated, then picked up. "Mr. Harrison, just checking in to see if you've reconsidered our offer. The developers are still very interested. Prices are going up, and you could get even more than last week's offer." I forced a smile into my voice, hiding the bitterness. "No, thank you, Jennifer. This house isn't for sale." She paused, her voice a shade more urgent. "If you change your mind, please call me right away. There's a lot of money on the table, and these opportunities don't last forever." I hung up, more convinced than ever that this wasn't about real estate, it was about roots. About the life Linda and I had built, not a quick payday. The house felt colder that night. The wind rattled the old windows, and I thought about all the storms these walls had weathered. I locked every door and window, a habit from another time, and tried to sleep. But the shadows in the corners seemed longer, and every creak of the house set my nerves on edge. At 2:45 a.m., I woke suddenly to the low rumble of an engine outside. I slid out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb Dusty. Parting the curtains just a crack, I saw a dark pickup truck idling at the curb. No license plate, just shadows behind the tinted glass. 3 figures in dark hoodies moved quickly, one with a duffel bag, another holding what looked like a crowbar. My heart pounded in my chest. I moved back from the window, my mind racing. Eric's threat rang in my ears. "If you won't sell, I'll find another way." Was this the other way? I reached for the old cordless phone and dialed 911, keeping my voice low. "This is Frank Harrison at 1204 Barton Lane. There are 3 men outside my house. I think they're trying to break in. Please hurry." Stay where you are, sir. Police are on the way, the dispatcher replied. I could hear the men outside, whispering, their footsteps crunching the gravel as they circled the house. A metallic scraping started at the back door, someone testing the lock. I moved to the hall closet, grabbing the shotgun I hadn't touched since Linda passed. My hands trembled as I loaded the shells. I'd hoped I'd never need it again, but tonight felt different. Police will be there in 15 minutes, the dispatcher said. I locked myself in the bedroom, the shotgun across my lap. From the hallway, I heard more scraping, the unmistakable sound of someone working the lock with the tool. Dusty whined at my feet, sensing my fear. I kept my finger off the trigger, remembering all those years of hunting trips. Always respect the weapon, always use it as a last resort. Then a voice, muffled, low, but unmistakable. Just hurry up. We need to be gone before the old man calls anyone. It was Eric. I'd recognize his voice anywhere. My stomach clenched, fury and heartbreak mixing inside me. My own son breaking into the house I built for him. I shouted through the door, my voice as steady as I could make it. I'm armed, and the police are on their way. Leave now, or you'll regret it. Everything went quiet for a split second. Then hurried footsteps, hushed voices, panic. He's got a gun, let's go. I watched through the bedroom window as the three of them sprinted to the truck, jumped in, and sped off, taillights vanishing into the night. The police arrived 10 minutes later, lights flashing red and blue, filling the neighborhood with questions. I explained what had happened, leaving out Eric's name for now. I wasn't ready to cross that line, not until I was sure. The officers took fingerprints, snapped photos of the scratched lock, and promised extra patrols for the next few days. But after they left, I was left alone with the truth. My own flesh and blood had tried to rob me. For money. For a shortcut. For reasons I could barely understand. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the family photos on the fridge. Pictures of Eric as a little boy, Linda holding him after his first Little League game, all of us at the Grand Canyon the summer before she got sick. I thought about how far we drifted from those days. About how love could curdle into greed, and how memory sometimes wasn't enough to keep a family together. The sun came up over the roses outside, dew glittering on the petals. I realized I couldn't protect Eric from his own choices, but I could still protect this house, and Linda's memory, for as long as I had breath in my body. I started a pot of coffee and sat down with a notebook, making plans. If Eric wanted a fight, he was about to learn just how stubborn an old Texas grandpa could be. The following day, my nerves were still raw. I barely slept, replaying every second of the break-in, every word Eric had said outside my house. The police had come and gone, their questions polite but their eyes wary, as if trying to decide if I was just a tired old man with wild stories or someone whose life had truly turned upside down overnight. After they left, I sat in my kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the last message Eric had sent. Dad, just think about what's best for everyone. There was no apology, no explanation, just the same tired plea that had started this whole mess. I deleted the message, resisting the urge to call him and scream. What would I say anyway? That I recognized his voice in the darkness, that I'd heard him urging those men to hurry up, as if he was the ringleader of some second-rate heist? Instead, I poured myself a cup of strong coffee and tried to remember who I was before all this trouble started. I made a list, old habits from my days running maintenance at the plant. Lists always made chaos seem more manageable. At the top, secure the house. I called a locksmith, explained what happened, and by noon, he'd installed new deadbolts on every door and reinforced the back entrance with a heavy-duty steel plate. Never hurts to be careful, he said, eyeing me the way young men look at their grandfathers, half with pity, half with respect. I went through every room, checking windows, testing locks. Dusty, loyal as ever, trailed behind me, tail low but watchful. In the living room, I paused in front of the fireplace, where Linda's photograph sat in a silver frame, smiling out at me as if to remind me that some things were worth fighting for. For lunch, I made a simple sandwich and sat by the window, watching neighbors walk their dogs and wave at each other. I wondered if they had any idea what had happened last night. In a small neighborhood like this, word travels fast, but nobody said a thing, just polite nods and small talk about the weather. By afternoon, exhaustion caught up to me, but I forced myself to stay busy. I gathered up all the important papers, deed to the house, insurance, old letters from Linda, and locked them away in the safe. I even called my attorney, Mrs. Ortega, just in case. She listened patiently as I described the break-in, then said, "Frank, you're not alone. If you need anything, you call me, even if it's just to talk." That night, I watched the evening news with the sound low, dusty at my feet. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel peaceful anymore. Every creak and groan of the old wood made my nerves twitch. I checked the security cameras I'd installed last year, their grainy footage showing nothing but the empty front yard and swaying branches of Linda's rose bushes. I tried to distract myself with small chores, sweeping the porch, refilling the bird feeder, even scrubbing the stove until it shone. Anything to keep my mind from circling back to Eric, to the disappointment that threatened to settle in my bones. Around midnight I wrote a letter to him, just a few lines, not meant to send but to clear my heart. I wrote about the day he was born, how small and helpless he'd looked in my arms, how I'd promised Linda I'd always keep him safe. I wrote about sacrifices, about the long nights working overtime so he could go to college, about the pride I'd felt when he got his first job. I wrote about love, the kind that doesn't keep score, and how sometimes that love can break your heart. When I finished, I tore up the letter, but the act left me strangely lighter. I realized then that Eric might never come back to the man he used to be. Maybe life had changed him too much, or maybe he'd always had this hunger in him, one that love alone couldn't fill. The next morning, I got a call from Michelle. Her voice was tense, tired. "Frank, I know things got heated between you and Eric. He's not himself these days. The pressure's getting to him." She didn't mention the break-in, and neither did I. Instead, I told her to take care of herself and the kids, and to remind Eric that some things, family, trust, decency, can't be bought or sold. She was quiet for a long moment. "We all need to remember that, Frank. I just hope it's not too late." After we hung up, I stared out at the yard, the grass glistening with dew. For the first time in days, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, things would settle down. Maybe Eric would realize what he'd nearly destroyed. Maybe he'd apologize, try to make things right. But by noon, another realtor called, this time with an even higher offer for the house. Word was out, my little place on Barton Lane was the last holdout in the neighborhood, and the developers wanted it bad. I told the agent no again, but her voice was slick with salesmanship. "Mr. Harrison, you're sitting on a gold mine. Think about your future. Think about your family." After I hung up, I wondered who had tipped them off. Had Eric called them, hoping to pressure me from another angle? Or was it just bad luck, a greedy world closing in around the last stubborn old man on the block? That evening, as the sun set over the Texas hills, I sat on the porch and watched the light fade from Linda's roses. Dusty barked at a stray cat, then curled up at my feet. The house was still standing, battered but unbowed. I promised myself, and Linda, wherever she was, that I'd keep fighting. I wouldn't let Eric's desperation, or anyone else's greed, erase the life we'd built together. I leaned back, feeling the cool breeze against my face, and waited for whatever tomorrow would bring. Because that's what old grandpas do, we hold the line, no matter what. The days rolled by in uneasy silence. I tried to keep busy, filling my hours with chores that once brought comfort, mending a fence post, patching a spot on the roof, repotting Linda's favorite succulents in the kitchen window. Each day, I tried to convince myself things would go back to normal, but deep down, I knew better. Every time the phone rang, I braced for Eric's voice, half hoping he'd call with an apology, half afraid he'd try something worse. One morning, about a week after the break-in, I noticed a strange car parked at the end of the block. Out-of-state plates, windows tinted too dark for a Texas summer. It sat there most of the day, engine idling now and then, the driver hidden behind the glare. By mid-afternoon, it was gone, but the unsettled feeling remained, like a shadow that wouldn't lift. That evening, I went out to get the mail and found a business card tucked into my mailbox. Maddox and Barnes Realty. The front read, and on the back, a handwritten note. Mr. Harrison, please call. We can make you a very generous offer. I shook my head and tossed the card in the trash. Every day it seemed like the world was pushing me toward an exit I never asked for. Later that night, I called my old friend, Charles Watson, who used to run security at the plant. Charles had a way of getting to the truth without scaring you. Frank, sounds like someone's trying to spook you. You want me to swing by, maybe park my truck out front a few nights? I chuckled, grateful for the offer. Appreciate it, Charles. Maybe just having another pair of eyes will help me sleep. The next evening, Charles showed up right around dusk, a thermos of black coffee in one hand and a worn flashlight in the other. We sat on the porch, talking about old times, listening to the cicadas drone in the heavy air. World's changing, Frank, he said after a long silence. Used to be, a man's home was his castle. Now it's just another square on a developer's blueprint. I nodded, the truth of it settling on my shoulders. I promised Linda I'd look after this place until the end. Never thought it'd come to fighting my own son over it. Charles looked at me, eyes full of sympathy. Sometimes blood don't mean loyalty. You did right, Frank. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. That night, I slept a little better with Charles's truck in the driveway, his silhouette visible in the porch light as he read an old paperback and sipped coffee. For the first time since the break-in, I felt like maybe I wasn't so alone in this fight. But trouble has a way of circling back. 2 days later, I was raking leaves in the backyard when I heard shouting from the front. I hurried around the side of the house and saw Eric standing in the driveway, red-faced, gesturing wildly at Charles. You have no right to be here! Eric yelled. This is still my dad's house. Charles stood calm and unbothered, arms folded across his chest. Just looking out for an old friend, son. You might want to show some respect. Eric's eyes flashed with anger. You're just making things worse, Dad. Why are you so stubborn? Why won't you just let go? I steadied myself, feeling the old ache in my back. This isn't just about me, Eric. This house is part of your mother, of you, of all of us. Money can't replace that. He shook his head, tears of frustration gathering in his eyes. You don't understand. Michelle's already talking about divorce. I'm behind on the mortgage. The kids ask why we can't have what everyone else does. I can't breathe anymore, Dad. I wanted to reach out and hug him, to tell him that things always work out in the end, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, Son, the only thing you ever really own in this life is your word and your actions. If you cross a line, you can't always come back. He wiped his eyes. Fists clenched. If you won't help me, I'll figure it out on my own. With that, he stormed off, leaving a cloud of dust and a hole in my chest where hope used to be. Charles watched him go, then turned to me. You did what you had to, Frank. Sometimes you gotta let them fall before they learn how to stand. I nodded, but it felt hollow. Watching Eric drive away, I wondered how many more bridges he was willing to burn. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote another letter, this time to Olivia and Ethan, Eric's kids. I told them stories about their grandma Linda, about the summer picnics we used to have under the big oak in the backyard, about the way their daddy used to laugh when he caught his first fish. I tucked the letters away, hoping someday they'd understand what really mattered. The days blurred together, each one heavy with waiting. I called Mrs. Ortega again, updated her on the latest events, and she reassured me that the house was safe as long as my name was on the deed. But Frank, she said, her voice gentle, keep your guard up. Desperate people do desperate things. She was right. A week later, I came home from the grocery store to find a notice taped to my front door. Intent to acquire, City of Austin redevelopment project. My hands shook as I read it. The city wanted the whole block, and my house was the last piece they needed. I was being pushed out, not by Eric, not by developers, but by the very city I'd called home for 40 years. I stared at the notice, heart pounding, wondering if this was the final straw, or just the beginning of a new fight. The notice from the city sat heavy in my hands, every word a reminder that even the best laid plans can be swept aside by powers far bigger than any one man. I read it again, slower this time, making sure I understood. The city wanted my land for a new shopping complex and urban revitalization. They promised fair market value. But I knew from neighbors who'd given in before me that all it meant was a check and a handshake, no replacement for the life Linda and I had built. For a few minutes, I just stood there on the porch, the autumn sun glinting off the roses Linda planted so long ago. Dusty barked at a squirrel, tail wagging, but even he seemed to sense my unease. I took the notice inside, locking the door behind me out of habit. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped Eric with math homework and listened to Linda hum old country songs as she cooked. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Mrs. Ortega again, her voice brisk but warm. Frank, I heard about the city notice. I know you're tired of fighting, but don't sign anything yet. They can't just take your house without a proper process. I'll come by tomorrow with all your paperwork, and we'll see exactly what they can and can't do. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in bed listening to the wind, remembering the day we first moved in, how Linda insisted on painting every room herself, how Eric's laughter echoed down the hallways, how the place felt like hope after years of renting. I wondered what Linda would say now. I could almost hear her voice, calm and steady. Don't let them scare you, Frank. This house is yours. Our memories are stronger than their money. The next morning, Mrs. Ortega arrived early, briefcase in hand, determination in her eyes. We went over every line of the city's notice, every page of my deed, every letter from the bank. You've got rights, she told me. They'll try to pressure you, but you don't have to give in. I'll file a formal objection and make sure they know you're not alone. By afternoon, I felt a little steadier. I mowed the lawn, trimmed the roses, and waved at the neighbors, most of them already packing, planning their moves. I understood their decisions. Not everyone can keep fighting, not when the world wants you to move aside. But I wasn't ready to leave just because someone else decided it was my time. A few nights later, I heard Eric's voice again, this time through the phone. He sounded tired, worn out, not angry like before. Dad, I know you got the city's notice. I just want you to know I'm sorry for how things have been. Michelle's moved in with her sister. The kids keep asking what's happening. I messed up, Dad. I let money come between us. I wish I could take it back. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up, to stay mad, to protect the last scraps of pride I had left. But another part remembered the boy Eric used to be, the one who always begged for one more story, one more hour in the backyard. We can't change the past, son, I finally said, my voice rough. But you can choose what kind of man you want to be from now on. He was quiet, then said, I want to help. I know you don't trust me right now, but if there's anything I can do, just ask. I'm still your son. After we hung up, I sat for a long time at the kitchen table, looking at the old family photos. I remembered the holidays, the laughter, the little arguments that never lasted long. I wondered how things got so twisted. I wondered if there was still a way back, even after all the hurt. The next morning, I met with Mrs. Ortega at City Hall. We filed the objection paperwork, stood our ground, and let the city's lawyers know they'd have to go through the courts if they wanted my house. It'll take months, maybe longer, Mrs. Ortega said. But you've bought yourself some time, Frank. Enough to make a plan, or just enjoy another season in your home. The neighbors started coming by, one by one, saying their goodbyes as moving vans pulled away. Some offered kind words, others just shrugged, beaten down by the grind. I shook every hand, wished them luck, and watched as the street grew quieter with every passing week. Eric called more often after that, never asking about the house, just checking in, talking about Olivia and Ethan, about the new job he found in another city. He sounded humbled, more like the son I used to know. Sometimes I let myself hope that maybe, in the end, love could outlast even the hardest disappointments. Winter crept in slow, the air crisp, the days shorter. I put up Linda's Christmas wreath, baked her favorite cornbread, and watched as snow dusted the rooftops. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. The city hadn't beaten me, Eric was trying to put things right, and my memories still lived in every corner of the house. But on Christmas Eve, just as I finished setting the table for one, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Eric standing there, holding a wrapped box, tears in his eyes. "Can I come in, Dad?" he asked, voice trembling. I stepped aside, letting him into the warmth and light, and in that moment, I realized that sometimes the things that matter most can't be bought, threatened, or bulldozed away. They have to be chosen, every single day. Eric stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his jacket, the box trembling in his hands. For a second, we just looked at each other, two stubborn men who'd been through too much, who'd said words they could never take back. Then, with a shaky breath, Eric stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. Dusty's tail thumped, sensing a familiar friend, and I motioned toward the kitchen. "Sit down, son. You're just in time for supper." He set the box on the table, fumbling with the ribbon. "It's not much, Dad. Just some old photos I found, and I thought you should have them." Inside were snapshots of birthdays and fishing trips, faded Polaroids from Linda's last summer, and a crayon drawing from Olivia, 3 stick figures beneath a big red heart labeled Grandpa's house. For a long moment I said nothing, just let the memories wash over me, Linda's laughter, Eric's toothless grin, the echo of family dinners in the walls. I glanced at my son, the man he'd become, his face etched with regret. "You know, Eric, I never wanted to fight with you. I just wanted you to remember what we built here. This house, it's not about the walls or the roof. It's about the life we made." Eric nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "I lost sight of that, Dad. I let Michelle's worries and the bills turn me bitter. I hurt you, and I almost lost everything that matters. I'm sorry." We sat together in the kitchen, the room warm with the smell of cornbread and black coffee, while outside the world was silent under a blanket of white. He told me about the new job, about Michelle moving out, about the kids and their questions, how they missed Grandpa's backyard, how Ethan wanted to learn how to fish in the spring. When supper was done, we walked the halls together, pausing at every photograph, every scuff mark, every tiny thing that made the house ours. I showed him the doorframe with his old height marks carved in it, the spot in the hallway where Linda would hang her apron every night. "These are the things you pass on, Eric," I said quietly. "Not just money. Not just property. But love. And stories." As midnight drew close, Eric stood at the door, ready to head home. He hugged me, holding on tighter than he had in years. "Thank you, Dad. For not giving up on me. For teaching me what matters, again." His voice was rough, but honest. After he left, I sat by the window, watching the snow drift down, feeling the house settle around me. The city still wanted my property. The developers would keep calling, sending their letters, making their offers. Maybe one day I'd have to move on. Maybe not. But for now, I was still here, in the home I'd built with Linda, surrounded by memories no one could ever take. As dawn broke over Barton Lane, I realized something had shifted, maybe not in the world outside, but in my heart. I'd survived loss, betrayal, fear, and loneliness. I'd faced down not just strangers, but my own blood. And in the end, I was still standing. The roses outside glistened with new frost, waiting for spring. I poured myself a mug of coffee and placed Olivia's drawing on the fridge, where Linda would have put it, right beside Eric's kindergarten photo. As I sipped, I whispered a thank you to her. Thank you for teaching me how to hold on, and when to let go. Maybe one day, the house would be gone, the garden turned to parking lots, the stories scattered to the wind. But tonight, with snow on the roof and hope rekindled in my chest, I knew the truth. Home isn't just a place. It's the people you love, the memories you keep, and the forgiveness you're brave enough to give. That, I thought, is the inheritance worth fighting for.